Hi, I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. Oh, man, I can hardly wait for this. It's going to be awesome. Stacey.
Max, things are so fun and exciting in the online digital crypto world, but in the meat space world and the real world here in America, you know, I want to look at what happened during these primaries over in California a few days ago. Senator Dianne Feinstein was once again nominated for the Democratic Party nomination for senator there. She's one of the most radically neocon right-wing nut jobs I've ever seen. And yet the so-called progressive people of California keep voting her and voting her. The very progressives that say, you know, that they should be somehow some sort of idol and hero and model for the rest of the world, and that Trump is a horrible person. Well, one of the candidates that lost for the Democratic nomination for governor, his name was Michael Schellenberger. He only got 17,440 votes, but he wrote this piece right before the primaries. Number one in poverty, California isn't our most progressive state. It's our most racist one. Everyone thinks California is our most progressive state, and why not? It imposes the highest tax on the richest 1%. It is aggressively implementing Obamacare, and it is standing up to President Donald Trump on everything from immigration to the environment. And yet, the Golden State is also number one in poverty and inequality in America. And he goes through a whole bunch of data, but this is the point, is that it's all talk, no action.
Isn't that the case? These so-called liberals are actually harboring some vicious neocons and some, what you might call there, the neo, you know, what's that, the economic model that's terrible?
Neoliberalism.
Neoliberalism. I got confused there for a second because liberals in the same, used twice there. It's not the utopian vision that some imagine of being. It's conservative / fascist.
Well, it's quite apocalyptic if you look at some of the data and facts that he lays out. Homeless encampments of hundreds of people have cropped up around the state in the last 2 years. Occasionally, they are ravaged by hepatitis A, which killed 20 people last year. In Silicon Valley, 132 people died on the streets in 2016, up from 85 in 2015. In San Diego, 117 people died, up from 56. Part of this is directly related to the cost of rent, which are directly related to the cost of so-called progressive policies, which is really about people who are very wealthy, say in Beverly Hills or Santa Monica or Silicon Valley, not wanting housing units built in their area. So they come up with all sorts of environmental restrictions and building restrictions to avoid anybody having access to basically lowering the price of their housing as well.
Right. I mean, we've been traveling all over the world for years, and you go to places like Egypt, and you see people who are genuinely poverty-stricken, who are living on a few dollars a day. Or you go to North Africa, and other areas of North Africa where you see similar types of extreme poverty. And now we're seeing that in America, a permanently entrenched underclass of poverty-stricken, really folks that will never, ever escape poverty and are just living on the street. And there's going to be no turning back.
Here's another point he points out. It's so gross and horrible, and it just sounds like one of these Night of the Living Dead sort of scenarios. But he said last year, San Diego city workers nearly killed a homeless person after accidentally throwing her and the tent she was sleeping in into the back of the garbage truck. She escaped just seconds before being crushed by the trash compactor. So this is really like this human garbage and human waste. We showed a video from a few months ago in the BART station in San Francisco. You're paying millions of dollars to live in a little hovel there in San Francisco. And this crack addicts, heroin addicts, all sorts of addicts in the stations and human feces all over the roads. And it's, you know, this is the progressive nirvana.
That's the interesting point. We know two things. We know that the U.S. economy is generating a permanent class of garbage people, zombie people that are on the streets and will never come back. We also know that the progressives and the liberals in a state like California don't see it. They don't, for some reason, they ignore it. They don't understand it. They don't see it. They don't understand the connection between their warmongering policies. You know, Dianne Feinstein would never voted against a war, and all that money goes into war that could go into, let's say, helping people not live on the streets. She doesn't see the connection. She's not a liberal. She's not progressive. She's a neocon. She's a war hawk. But in the state of California, they spin it as something completely different. And sadly, because this is contributing to a collapse of many aspects of the American experience.
I want to also talk about the racist policies and the actual outcomes of California. But in terms of this neocon sort of really nasty, violent state thuggishness of California, the genuine heart of the so-called California progressive liberals, Democrats, is that they were forced to reduce their population in their prison population by the courts. The court said they were grossly overcrowded. This was human rights violations. So they had to reduce the population of their prison by 12% between 2011 and 2015. But they have a very, very powerful union, okay? Unions are progressive, right? But these are prison guard union, and it's super powerful. So that's why in the state they pay more for prisons than they do for education. And while they reduce the population of prisoners by 12%,